Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to Tuesday's lesson. Today we're going to be doing the module review for Module 15, which was comparing fractions. I would like for you to turn to page 417 and 418. We are also going to complete an extended response problem. Before we go over the review, I would like for you to pause the video and take 20 minutes to complete both pages of the review. When you're finished, you can come back and we'll go over it to see how you did. Hi, welcome back. So let's go over the review. As you see, I have one page up on the left side of the screen, and on the other side of the screen, I have our fraction strips, just to help us to explain our reasoning for our answers. So let's start off with the vocabulary. Choose the correct term from the vocabulary box to complete the sentence. Use a symbol to complete the comparison. 1/4 mile or 1/2 mile. So if I'm using a symbol, I'm looking for the equal to, the greater than, or the less than symbols. And I'm going to choose the correct one to complete the comparison. Well, without using my fraction bars, I know that 1 part out of 4 is less than 1 part out of 2. Since my numerators are the same, I take a look at my denominators. The bigger my denominators, the more parts the whole is broken up into. So the smaller it makes each part. So 4 parts, each of those parts is smaller than the 2 parts. So 1/4 is less than 1/2. And if I go ahead and I look at my fraction bars, I can see where I have 1/2. And then I look at my fraction bar that's fourths, and I can see where I have 1/4, and 1/4 is less than 1/2. Number 2, the blank of a fraction tells how many equal parts are in the whole. So which part of the fraction tells you how many equal parts in one whole? Correct, the denominator. And then number 3, the blank of a fraction tells how many equal parts are being counted. That's right, and that's that top number or your numerator. Number 4, Megan colors 5/6 of her sheet of paper. Natasha colors 2/6 of her paper. The sheets of paper are the same size and shape. Who colors more of the paper? How do you know? Tell what strategy or tool you will use to answer the question. Explain your choice and then find the answer. So we know that Megan colors 5/6 and Natasha colors 2/6. We know that the sheets of paper are the same size and the same shape, and that's really important in order for us to be able to compare the fractions. And we want to find out who colors more of the paper and how we know. It asks us to tell a strategy. So let's take a look at our fractions. We have Megan with 5/6, and we have Natasha with 2/6. I notice that both of my fractions have the same denominators. That means the whole is broken up into the same amount of parts, so the parts are the same size. So now all that's left to do is to look at the numerators and see how many parts we're counting. Well, Megan already colored 5 parts out of the 6, and Natasha has colored 2 parts out of the 6. So Megan has colored more. So Megan colors more. The strategy that I used was comparing, was same denominators, so you compare the numerators. So the strategy was same denominator. And I can also look over at my fraction bars. Which fraction bar am I going to use for 5/6 and 2/6? Well, I'm going to look for my fraction bar that has a 6 in the denominator or is counting by sixths. And I can compare 5/6 and I can also compare 2/6. I know that 5/6 is greater than 2/6. Number 5, Doug and Maria each have a waffle. The waffles are the same size and shape. Doug eats 2/3 of his waffle. Maria eats 5/6 of her waffle. Who has more waffle left? Explain. So waffles are the same size and shape, and it's two people eating them. Doug eats 2/3. Maria eats 5/6. So here we have Doug with 2/3, Maria with 5/6. Are we able to use same numerator strategy? No, our numerators are different. We have a numerator of 2 and a numerator of 5. Are we able to use the same denominator strategy? Nope. We have two different denominators. We have a denominator of 3 and a denominator of 6. Are we able to use the missing piece strategy? We are. Doug is missing 1/3. Maria is missing 1/6. The question is, who has more waffle left? Well, which part is greater? Which missing part is greater? 1/3 or 1/6? Well, I know that 1 part out of 3 is greater than 1 part out of 6 because the parts in 1/3 are larger. So Doug has more waffle left. Okay, and if we want to look over at our fraction bars, we can look at this one on our fraction bars. I'm just going to erase what I drew on there before. And Doug eats 2/3. So I'm going to go ahead and show what Doug eats. And I'm going to cross it off because he already ate this. And we're focusing on the part that's left over, which is there. And then Maria eats 5/6. So I'm going to go ahead and cross off what she ate. And again, we're focusing on what's left over. So this was Doug, this was Maria, okay? And we can see that Doug has 1 part out of 3 left over, and Maria has 1 part out of 6 left over. And since my denominator of 3 is less than my denominator of 6, I know that that 1 part that Doug has left over is going to be greater. So Doug has more waffle left over. How are you doing so far? Let's take a look at the last couple of problems. Paula and Joey each have equal sized tortillas. Paula cuts her tortilla into 8 equal pieces and eats 5 of them. Joey cuts her tortilla into 6 equal pieces and eats 5 of them. Who eats less? Explain how you found your answer. Use a drawing to help show your answer. So we see that our two models are the same shape and the same size, okay? And they're already labeled. We have Paula and Joey. So I know that Paula cuts them into 8 equal pieces. So my denominator is going to be 8ths, and she eats 5 of those pieces. And Joey cuts his into 6 equal pieces, so my denominator is going to be 6, and he eats 5 pieces. So I'm counting 5, so my numerator is a 5. So they're counting the same amount of parts, so we have the same numerator here. And I can use that as a strategy to compare my fractions. I know that when I have the same numerator, I look at my denominator. The smaller denominator is actually the biggest fraction because those parts are greater. The parts that you're counting are bigger. So we have 5/8 and 5/6. I know that 8 is bigger than 6. That means those parts are going to be smaller. So 5/6 is actually going to be greater. But now let's use our circles to model our problem. So we're going to take Paula and I'm going to cut it into eighths. So you're kind of cutting it like a pizza. Okay, and she eats 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts. Oh, wow. I noticed that 4/8 is half of that whole tortilla. So she eats a little more than half. 5/8. Now I'm going to go ahead with Joey and I'm going to cut his into 6 equal parts. Okay, and he's going to eat 5 of those parts. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow, I noticed that 3 parts out of 6 is half of that tortilla. 4 parts and 5 parts. So my comparison was correct. Paula does eat less than Joey. 5/8 is less than 5/6. So who eats less? Paula eats less. And I can explain my answer by using the strategy of same numerator or by using my models. Number 7, what fraction does the number line show? Well, boys and girls, if you remember back to when we were labeling number lines, we need to check how many equal parts are in the entire whole. So from 0 to 1, how many parts are there? And some of you like to turn it into a little bar model kind of to help you out, to help you visualize. And I see that there's 4 equal parts. So if there's 4 equal parts in one whole, I know that my denominator is going to be fourths. And I start off at 0 or 0/4. And my first jump is 1/4 and 2/4. And you're all pretty good with this now. 3/4 and then 1 whole, which is also equal to 4/4. Okay, so what fraction does the number line show? The red dot shows 3/4. And we would do the same thing with the next one. Label the fraction 3/8 on the number line. In this case, they tell us what the denominator is. So according to 3/8, there should be 8 equal parts from the 0 to the 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's correct. So we start off with 0 or 0/8, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 1 whole, which equals 8/8. Okay, and where I would put a mark would be on my 3/8, which would be right here. And then write less than, greater than, or equal to compare the fractions on the number lines. So my first fraction was 3/4, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in here. And my second fraction was 3/8, and it's written for us. So now we just have to compare those two, 3/4 and 3/8. We can use our number line. The wholes are the same size. The 0 starts here, the 1 ends here. And since they both have the same numerator, we look at their denominators. And you can see the spaces or the parts are a lot bigger in the fraction that has a denominator of 4 because 4 is less than 8. So it's breaking it up into less parts, so those parts are greater. So 3 parts out of 4 is greater than 3 parts out of 8. So 3/4 is greater than 3/8. So how did you do? Do you feel comfortable with this? Now let's take a look at an extended response problem, okay? And I don't have my fraction bars here just yet because I really want you to practice explaining your thinking using the strategies that we've learned in this module. But once we're done, we will look at our fraction bars just to make sure that our work is correct. So let's take a look. On the left-hand side of your screen, you have a recipe, and the recipe is for banana bread. And on the left side, you have all the ingredients. And you'll notice that you see a lot of fractions. In cooking, boys and girls, you do use a lot of fractions because you don't always need a whole of something. Sometimes you just need a part. So they list them as fractions. So ingredients, 2/3 cup granulated sugar, 8 tablespoons of butter, 2 large eggs, 3 ripe bananas, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon or 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, 3/4 cups all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder. Now, if I had all these ingredients, I would be making banana bread this morning. So these are the ingredients needed to make banana bread. Look at the quantities for each ingredient. Explain your work by using any strategy to compare the fractions. Name the strategy you used. Check your work with fraction strips. So the first question is, do you need more sugar or flour? So they want to compare the sugar and the flour. So let's take a look. The sugar, we have 2/3 cup sugar. 2/3 of a cup. And for flour, we have 3/4 of a cup. So we want to compare those two fractions. Can we use the strategy same numerator? No, we can't use that strategy because both numerators are different. Can we use the same denominator strategy? Well, we can't do that either because both denominators are different. Can we use the missing piece strategy? We can. If they're asking us which one is more, then we want to find the missing piece that's the smallest. So let's change colors. Okay, so what would the missing piece be for 2/3? Would be 1/3. What would the missing piece for 3/4 be? It would be 1/4. So now let's take a look at our missing pieces. We have 1/3 and 1/4. Which one of those has a smaller missing piece? The flour. 1 part out of 4 is smaller than 1 part out of 3. So if the flour is missing less to make a whole cup, then flour is greater. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would create a model from scratch. First thing I want to do is make 2 bars that are the same size. And that's important when comparing fractions. Your whole has to be the same size. So now I'm going to do the sugar first. And I'm going to break it up into 3 equal parts. Okay, and I'm going to use 2/3, 2 of those parts of sugar. Then I'm going to do the flour, and I want to break it up into 4 equal parts. Okay, and I'm going to shade in 3 of those parts. Okay, and I can tell that 3/4 is greater than 2/3. Okay, let's look at the second part. Do you need more cinnamon or baking powder? So let's switch the color up again. Let's find the cinnamon. Cinnamon is here, and you need 1/4 teaspoon. And the baking powder is here, and you need baking powder, and you need 1/2 teaspoon. So let's take a look at our 2 fractions and what strategy can we use to compare these 2 fractions. Yeah, we can use same numerator. They both have a numerator of 1, So I'm using that strategy to compare. So I know that we're shading in, or we're counting one part on each, and now we have to decide which one of those parts is going to be greater. If you have a whole and you break it up into 4 equal parts, and then you have a whole of the same size and you break it up into 2 equal parts, which of those parts are greater? The parts that are broken up into 4 or the ones in 2? Well, the ones in 2, because you have less parts that you're breaking it into. So 1/4 is less than 1/2. So you would need more baking powder. And the strategy that I used here was same numerator. Okay, and for this one, I used missing piece. Okay, and now just to make sure, let's check on our fraction bars. And I've only included the fractions that we're comparing. So let's take a look at the 2/3 and the 3/4. We have 2/3 here and 3/4 here. And yes, 3/4 is greater than 2/3. And then for the cinnamon and the baking powder, I have 1/4 and 1/2. Okay, and I could see that the 1/4 is smaller than 1/2. How did you do, boys and girls? Okay, so boys and girls, today's Nearpod activity is an extended response problem. Please be sure to take your time, answer each part, and explain your thinking. Tell me what strategy you used. You can draw bar models. You can use same numerator, same denominator, missing piece, whichever strategy you use to compare the fractions. And make sure you just explain your thinking and your work. So the code for English is DVHEN. Lo código para español is DLTPF. E o código para português é DNRIE. All right, boys and girls, good luck, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel.